Good afternoon. It's Kent Mulgett at KelownaNow, joined with Jim Check and Jeane Herman from MNP. And our topic is debt, something that you're very familiar with, Jeane. Tell us about your role at MNP.
So, Jeane Herman, licensed insolvency trustee at MNP, and I work with consumer debtors, so individuals that have debt and are looking for solutions to deal with it.
Right. No shortage of that these days.
And you brought in a really nice chart here that if Nick can pull up there, and you can walk us through it, and we'll try not to interrupt you as you walk through this chart.
So the emotional journey of debt starts with getting credit, and we get excited about getting credit, and then we get more credit, possibly, and we think that we can handle that. And then as we're getting the credit, we're starting to use it and we build debt. And we might start getting anxious about it. We might actually get more debt. And sometimes we get the more debt because it becomes a cycle. We're using debt credit to pay other debt. And if we lose our job or some life event happens, then we might start getting anxious about it. Maybe we get a new job, we're hopeful again, but maybe we're further behind than when we were before. The new job doesn't pay as much, and we start getting scared and overwhelmed if we aren't able to keep up. Creditors start calling, we start panicking, feeling shame. It's a trigger to reach out for help. And when you reach out for help, calling a licensed insolvency trustee who will go over the options to deal with that debt can give you some relief, because you can then find the solution that's right for you, which hopefully might be you doing it on your own or doing a proposal or a bankruptcy, and clearing your debts is the ultimate goal, and then getting that hope back and getting your life back on track.
So lots of times, young people, especially as credit becomes available to them, they get to have this stuff because as you're younger, you're more impulse driven. Mm-hmm. They get a credit card, and then if they're paying at a checkout stand and they offer them another credit card for, like, if you use the credit card, you get $10 off your purchase. So they get another credit card, and then even if they go shop at Lululemon, they say, oh, you can make these purchases over the next 6 months. I think Amazon offers lots of places. Apple offers it online now. So there's so many places that can turn your monthly obligations into something that you're just not going to be able to meet.
So the enticement of new credit over and over again, piling up how much available money you have to spend that's not yours.
Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because it's just like, I really like this jacket at Lululemon. It's $400. I don't have $400, but hey, if I only pay $50 every week, I can do that. Mm-hmm. But they don't recognize that, their car payment, there's all those other things. And then if a roommate moves out or something like that, then all of a sudden they got to meet all that rent obligation on their own.
Yeah, or some other life event happens. Mm-hmm. That's true. So piling on debt isn't or piling on credit is helping the creditor, but it doesn't necessarily help you.
And consumer debt would be obviously the worst type of debt, as opposed to mortgage debt, not just like credit card debt, like, because interest payments on credit cards can be, I think, what's the high in Canada? Is it 28.8? Is that the maximum they can charge, or 28.9? There's a ceiling that they have.
There's a ceiling, and I think it varies depending on the type of credit it's giving. I think that maybe payday loans have some different regulations than other creditors. But right. You'll see the majority of national bank credit cards being around the 20%.
Yeah, 19.9 or something like that.
Yeah.
Right. It's hard not to have negative feelings towards an agency that would reach out to give someone a credit card they shouldn't have and ultimately charge them those rates.
So does the rate matter if you pay it off in full?
Well, exactly.
But are the people that are most vulnerable the ones taking that easier credit, though, that they know they can't pay it off? They're taking it because they just want something?
Not consciously know they can't pay it, probably not when they first take the credit. It's probably further on, like when we look at what the statement says if you make your minimum payment,
right, it's only $13.
It's $13 or $10, and in people's mind they can do that.
Right.
I talked to somebody not that long ago, and he was saying that one of his credit card companies were calling him wanting to raise the limit, and he was saying no, and they were going, well, it's not costing you anything, and he's going, yeah, it is. If I use it, I'm going to have pay out more money that I don't have.
I watched a show, this is a number of years ago, and I can't remember, like CBC The National or one of those investigative reporters, and they actually went and met with the guy, I think it was in India, and he's the one that created all these algorithms for credit cards and how they can make, and he regretted creating all these like all the different fees, because if you miss a payment, then all these other fees start to kick in, and then the fees can be astronomical and just bury somebody.
Or if you started off with a low limit or low interest
rate,
credit card, missing payment could just pop it up
just
to the
triggers
regular rate. Yeah.
So how does a young person instill in themselves, or how does a parent help their children as they enter adulthood to protect themselves with just the right amount of debt aversion, or to avoid falling into these traps? What do you do?
So looking at the type of credit we're getting, so if we're talking about a credit card, what's the purpose of having it? In our mind, what are we thinking about when we take that credit? And, now at my age, I've been through life quite a bit, it would be to build a credit rating. So that if I was young and I want to buy a house, or I want to get a car, and I want to get the best interest rates, I want my credit rating to be good. So I want a credit card or some form of credit so I can build my credit rating. But I don't want to use it to the limit. Equifax publishes that if you only use 30% of your available credit, you're going to start building a good credit rating. So it's something that you would use with purpose, with intent, and the intent would be that every month you would pay it off. You're not going into debt.
Right, and arrange it so it's paid off in full every month. You never pay a penny of that horrible interest rate. You get a credit rating out of it, and the convenience of having a credit card. There's so many payments that it's...
Yeah,
and I don't think you can get away with not having a credit card these days, because if you go to a lot of stores now don't take cash. So you need a credit card, and in Canada we do have debit cards, but in the United States, if you go down there, a lot of them don't take the debit card, so they only take a credit card.
Well, we're going to stick in Canada then. We're not moving to the States.
I'm just saying, there's not a lot of choices. There's a lot of vendors now that will not accept cash.
But then the debit cards.
Right, but I'm just saying, if you go to the U.S.,
yes,
if
you're traveling,
debit cards, right? So you're kind of you don't have much choice in today's modern world not to have a credit card. I think what Kent was saying, and what I think the schools need to start doing, is teaching financial literacy early on, and showing, the dangers of a credit card. You should almost have to take a test when you get a credit card. Just what happens if you leave a balance? And do you know what I mean? How much of this money goes here and how much of it goes there? And right now in Canada, we're definitely, with inflation running away, we're seeing people use their credit cards to buy groceries, which is not a great place to be using available credit.
Well, it would be okay if it's part of your budget.
Correct. But if it's
using it to
you're having a tough time paying
income?
your power or your bills, and you're just maxing yourself out, which a lot of Canadians have, because we are, including the United States, we are seeing many people maxing out their cards to pay for monthly necessities.
I buy my groceries with my credit card, but it gets paid off every month.
But you're lucky, some people aren't as lucky right now that they don't have that luxury. And I'm sure we can hear from people that will tell us. I hear from people lots of times that say that, they're not filling up their gas tank. They're putting in as much as they think they can get by with, and they're buying groceries with their credit card because that's all they have access to at this point, right?
Yeah, and does that cycle of debt that we get into, so you use your credit card, you have to make a payment that lessens your available income to go towards the necessities.
It's a spiral, for sure.
It's a cycle.
Yeah,
it's going over, around and around.
And I guess at some points, I think I watched something on one of the social platforms the other day, and they were saying, is it better off to pay down your credit card or buy a lottery ticket? Some people were saying buy a lottery ticket because that's the only way they're going to get out of it. So that's poor logic, right? But
it is poor logic, yes.
Right, but I think that's where you talk about that shame thing. I think people are at a point where, they're willing to try anything.
And they don't want to talk to other people about the debt.
Yeah.
So the shame is there where if they're suffering, they're not bringing that suffering forward. If they start talking about it, they might find solutions. How about equating January 1st to what are your resolutions? Most people, it's health. What about your financial health.
Right.
So,
because that's your mental health too, right? Because I think financial health, if you're overly stressed, you don't want to talk to me, you get moody, you get a whole bunch of things. And obviously you feel like the world's crushing you, shame, all those things. And then it really affects your mental health, which then will affect your physical health.
Yeah. I want to ask you about that, though. So you will see people when they're at the bottom of that curve you showed us, where things are really kind of terrible and there doesn't look like a good way out. But it must be nice for you to at least say, okay, things are terrible right now, but here's the path forward. It must be nice for you to see them, the people who come to you, find at least an exit from their scenario.
that's true. And when people come to see me, and you feel their psyche, I don't know if it's called psyche, but you feel the weight that they're carrying. And then, after you've helped them, so they're in a process, maybe a bankruptcy, maybe a proposal, and you talk to them when they're maybe getting done that process. And you can feel the lightness in their voice that was never there when you first met them. There is a big difference.
It must be gratifying.
It's very gratifying.
If you look at, there's a stat here, the average credit card debt for Canadians in the third quarter of 2023 was $42.65. And I can tell you right now, most people cannot carry that and pay those balances on a monthly basis. Right?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like most people don't make that much, right? So they're carrying debt on their credit cards, which is the worst place to carry. And Kent had a good point there. Like, I guess the question is, they're at the bottom of the curve. They finally call you. Like someone says, "Hey, well, call me." Like, and say they have a bunch of credit cards, they have some other debt and car payments and all that stuff. What is their path out? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what is the path that you can help them with? Like, how do they get out of it without declaring or do they declare bankruptcy?
Exactly.
Or what is it that they do?
People think when they call me, they're going to have to file bankruptcy. In a lot of cases, people are picking up the phone and saying, I need to file bankruptcy. What's the next step?
But a lot of them don't have to.
Well, they just want to clear the slate, right? They just want to, they think they can just use a magic eraser and take care of it, right?
So a lot of them, you're right, a lot of them don't have to file bankruptcy. It's sitting down, finding out what each individual circumstances are and working out their options. Sometimes it's retooling their budget, looking at that with them. What comes in? Where does it have to go? So what are the base expenses that we have to spend our money on, which you've gone back to rent, utilities. If you have a car, you're going to keep your car because you're getting back and forth to work, your car payments.
You could downscale your car and maybe go from one car to a used car. You know what I mean?
Possibly.
Yeah.
And looking to see what's left over to deal with the debt. And that opens up what the options might be. So for some people, it is just a budget. Just like, here it is. You have this leftover money and you're able to afford to pay the debt back.
Well, some lenders or creditors negotiate on some of those balances?
Yes. So we've had people where we, go back and talk to them because you have some money there. See if they'll lower your interest rate. And if you can get a lower interest rate on a credit card or move a credit card debt into a line of credit.
Well, this was my question. If we can go back to that 4,000 plus,
right? $42.65
that your typical Canadian is carrying on their credit card. I wonder what percentage of those people would have right before them the option of going into their bank and saying, look, I've let my credit card get out of control. I need a $5,000 line of credit. That way I can pay back at a more reasonable rate and start, minding my business a little better so that doesn't happen again. Is that line of credit not made available to a good percentage of those people?
It varies. It depends on the credit. So when we're talking about the average credit of was $4,200, $4,265, that's the average. So you have people quite a bit higher, and then you have people with maybe next to nothing. So if you have credit with various institutions, some institutions aren't going to be willing to take on the debt of other institutions. It's a risk. Yeah. And it goes back to what's their income, what are their circumstances, their ability to pay. So some people, it is the option. Getting a consolidation loan. I like a loan better than a line of credit. Don't know if the banks like loans as much, but with the loan, you're not tempted to continue dipping into it as you pay it off.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people would like to blame the current debt crisis on what's going on in the world right now. And I can go back to, I don't know what the year was, but I think I was in my 20s. And my first real serious relationship, I was with a young lady, and she was getting kind of moody, like really kind of cranky. And then I'm just like, what?
Where are we going with this?
What's going on? And
But this was about money.
she's like crushing credit card debt. And I was just like, what? So I said, I'll pay off your credit cards. I'll pay them off. Because we weren't splitting money at the time. And I said, I'll pay off all your credit cards as long as I get to cut them off. Right? Because you need not to do credit cards. Right? Because she said she couldn't control her spending habits. Right? So I cut them up, paid off her debt. And she was great. Like, she was amazing for like 6 months.
Until suddenly
a couple months later, she's back to moody. I'm like, what's going on? She said, credit card debt. And I said, how? You don't have credit cards. She's, well, I went and got another one.
Yeah, they give them to you pretty easy.
So it's sometimes it's not, the point is, I think sometimes
Jim,
people think it's easy though, right?
What did you learn?
What did I learn? Mm-hmm. Well, not to put money on credit cards, right? Like,
no, not to enable somebody.
Yeah, well, I guess, right? Well, we broke up, so.
So paying that credit off for the person
enabled them to go out and get more credit because their credit rating was still good.
Didn't think about that.
Let's just blame Jim. I like this.
And instead of sitting down and working out a plan on how she could deal with this.
Hey, I'm a man. I'm trying to solve problems. Right?
Yeah. No, you can see your intent was in the right place. But
it was.
But it
Jim.
just allowed her to fall back into that habit.
Yeah, but I'm saying that sometimes people are victims of the ease of credit, right? And they think, like, my current wife, I shouldn't say my only wife, she used to work at the bank, CIBC, and when they first brought in ATMs, one young fella in that town figured out that you just empty envelope deposits and then you take money out. Like, you put in an envelope that you say you put 400 in, and then then you can take 400 out. Didn't realize that the machine records who was doing it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Eventually, you've got to come up with that.
Yes.
But I'm just saying, some people think it's pretty easy to get in. It's kind of a trap for lots of people.
It is easy to get, and I believe it is a trap for a lot of people.
Yeah.
They don't have the funds to pay it back, and maybe they did with their first credit card, but what if they just keep adding to that?
Debt can be a monstrous trap. And I would say, and this is where I will say something, when we had a Bank of Canada governor come out and say, rest assured, you can go ahead and get that mortgage. We're not going to move interest rates up. And people have $1 million mortgages at 0.75, and now they're about to come due. A lot of them are going to come due, and they're going to be at 5% and plus.
And you're looking that they're not going to be able to make their mortgage payment and deal with all their other debt.
Correct.
This might be a question for an economist, but I took a little bit of economics in university, and there's something called the paradox of thrift. And that would tell us that if we all misbehave in this way and spend more money than we should on things we don't really need, that's what's keeping this economy rolling. If we all start being really sensible with our money, the overall economy would actually suffer a little.
Some would argue that their house is a necessity.
Well, okay, I'm not saying that's not a necessity, but having people really feeling free about their spending, it does, in a way, help us all.
So printing money or creating money, as like Ben Bernanke out of the U.S., you probably remember him, right?
I don't know Ben Bernanke.
No, you don't? Oh, okay. He was the Fed governor way back in the day, and he penned a paper that was called helicopter money. And he said the way to increase the economy, obviously, is to flood the economy with money by created money. And we've done that. We've done it here in Canada. We've done it all around the world. We create money, and then we put it into the economy. And money has a multiplier effect, right? Because if I spend it with you, you spend it with Kent, we kind of create a multiplier. And it actually works to some extent until you go too far, and then you increase debt. Because right now, we did a story on KelownaNow this morning, that right now the BC government alone is paying more on servicing our debt, the British Columbia debt, than they are on all the social services program combined. So debt can be a huge trap if interest rates go the wrong way.
So we really need the governments to watch this.
I don't think they're going to. I don't know if they're going to take our advice. But if you think about that, even in Canada, right, $88 billion or something like that. Just think what that money could do for homelessness and opioid crisis. You know what I mean? But instead it's servicing debt, right? So.
But then the money that they borrowed, where did that go, and how did that help? We don't know that.
Well, they probably put it in their pocket.
Okay.
I have no idea. I think if you ask some of them, they don't know where it was. I think we've seen that where they say, we have no idea. Anyway, we're probably going down the wrong road.
We're off topic.
But debt, what the point is, debt can be very attractive for what you get with it.
Yes,
but it's
the
almost
credit.
like this dragon, right? You know what I mean? Like when you're looking at it, you may think it's a nice little kitty cat, but then when it says I want to get paid, it can be very, very foreboding. Like, you know what I mean? It can be very, very, it can destroy relationships, friendships, all kinds of things, right? Especially if I get myself in debt and I reach out to Kent and I say, you know what, I just need, because all of a sudden we reach out to people too, I just need $2,000 to get me through this month. And of course, I don't have the means to pay back that $2,000 either, though, right? So,
Right.
So
Which is why I won't lend it to you.
So Kent's going to help you find solutions to deal with it, rather than just
I think
giving
Kent's
you the
just gonna
money and
hang up.
enabling you.
He's just going to hang up the phone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of people take on debt to pay debt. A lot
Right,
of people,
for sure.
as you said, go buy lottery tickets.
Yeah.
It's
Or go to
considered.
the casino.
Yeah, it's considered gambling,
Right.
thinking they're going to have the big win, but the chances of winning are slim, and it's not the solution.
So how do we get more financial literacy? Do you know what I mean? Like, how do we coach people? Like, and then some people would say that the department stores and all, because they're the ones that are really trying to get those cards into people's hands, right? Because they're trying to build brand loyalty too, right? Hudson Bay wants to give you a card, Walmart wants to give you a card, Amazon wants to give you a card. They all want to give you a
and the
credit
banks
card,
want to
right?
give you
And
a
the bank
card.
want to give you a card.
So open up a new account, and the bank's going to say,
Right. So
Want a credit
and then they
card.
tempt you too, because they might give you $100, they might give you $50, they might give you something to kind of get you going, or some points or whatever. And then all of a sudden you have a fistful of credit cards, right? And then I know, I think I mentioned earlier, but I think it was when we lost our live stream, is that some of the American mentality is they deal in available credit, right? As opposed to when people say, like, what do you have for savings? In Canada, we would say, this is what I have for savings, and this is my debt. But in the Americans would say, well, this is my available credit. I take my operating line, my credit cards, and I have $150,000 at my disposal.
yeah. And I'm thinking Canadians don't want to talk about their money to other people.
I think, is it not true that you talk about literacy, it's just something people don't talk about. It's considered rude to ask somebody how much money they have. So we just avoid the topic.
Yes.
And so everybody keeps it in, and sometimes what they're keeping in isn't good.
Well, when you try to get a credit
Yes.
card, they are asking. I do believe with technology, a lot of the stuff is reported better now too, so you can kind of see people's credit history more and what they have for available credit. Like, when the next credit card company tries to lend, so, well, you have enough out there already.
But how do they know what's enough? They're just looking.
I think they base it on your income level and stuff like that, right? So
So if you're walking through the store and there's that person with the clipboard offering you a new credit card, are they looking at your credit bureau report while they're helping you fill out that application? They're not.
they're not, but I believe the system, when
Someone
when
back
they
at the
key it
home
in,
office,
they're probably,
I guess,
they're
but-
probably,
But
coming
I mean,
up with a yes or no
I'm
score.
sure they're quite lenient in letting people take on that credit card.
They are up to a point. So if we start missing payments on our debts, then we start having a bad credit history. Our score is going
Right.
down. And if somebody's going to be looking at that and they are wanting to buy a house or wanting to get a car, they might have the money to do those things because they've saved up their down payment for their house, or a partial payment towards the purchase of the car, and they go in to the mortgage broker or to the car dealership, and there's no financing because of the debt they have.
There is predatory lending, though, too. Like, we've seen it in mortgages in the U.S. with subprime, but we also see it here with subprime loans with car dealers, right? When you're buying used cars, that we've actually talked to a few people where they're told that they're buying a used car and say it has a value of $5,000, but they sell it to them for 10 at a 19% rate interest. They say you only have to pay for that for like 3 months of that, and then we'll get you back in here and we'll get you a new car because you don't qualify for a new car right now. But of course, they never let them out of that other loan.
It's a
right?
cycle.
Yeah.
I see those cycles, and my advice is if you can deal with your debt and start saving to get your vehicle, and if you can purchase that used vehicle outright rather than having to get a loan for it,
sure, yeah,
that would be
for
your
sure.
best option. The loan wouldn't be at the dealership. It would be at your financial institution. If you're buying a used car, I'd be going to my bank and going, what can you help me with here? What's my rate? And yeah, so it might be a higher rate than that subprime or that 19, well, it'll be a lower rate than 19.9%. That's high.
And there's high loans out there. And, Uncle Louie or Uncle Kent, I'm sure he's probably even higher.
No, I'm not big on getting loans or giving them. But, it is a big percentage of us that are making this mistakes, though, isn't it?
I guess the big question I have for you is, how's business right now?
Business, the calls are coming in more than they were, say, a year ago.
So business is good, but that's not good for people.
That's not good for people.
You, but it's not good for what we say about the state of Canada, or Canadians, or British Columbians, or in this area. You're dealing with Okanagan people mainly.
If you look at the stats, bankruptcies in Kelowna are going up. Or insolvencies are going up. I can't say they're all bankruptcies. Sometimes it's a proposal, which is an alternative to filing bankruptcy. But they're not at a level they were before COVID hit. So the number of insolvencies went down per year during our COVID years. And now insolvencies are starting to be on the rise again.
We're seeing it with businesses too. We're seeing businesses starting to close, right, that were hanging by a thread, and they were maybe using some funding that was available to them during.
So, but just to be clear, we're not quite at the level that we were pre-COVID?
We're not at the level where we were at pre-COVID. We're building there, though.
Building back there.
So when people are reaching out and getting solutions, is it that we're not at that level because people aren't reaching out that need help, or are people actually managing better than they were pre-COVID?
Like, I watch a lot of the stuff in the U.S. because they kind of share stats more freely. Like, they track stuff better, and bank repos are nearing all-time highs. And those bank repos, car repossessions, I should say, they don't have enough tow trucks down there right now to repossess the cars. So some of the banks are paying premiums to get their vehicles repoed first because they want to get them to auction first. It's because they know that the market's going to get flooded with a bunch of cars.
And the value's coming down.
The value's coming down, yeah. Values are crashing for vehicles, right? When they were paying $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 premiums during COVID, right? Because they couldn't get...
during COVID, the value of a used vehicle went up. I had done a black book search on a vehicle, and a year later, that person had reached out for help, hadn't actually, decided which way they were going to go, came back a year later looking again for help, trying to make a decision which way to go when we did a black book, and the value of the vehicle had gone up by $2,000, and it was a used vehicle.
Yeah, no,
that was a lot.
You couldn't get, I know my son sold his Honda, like an older Honda, and like, I couldn't believe what he got for that Honda. And it was because the supply obviously had gone, into a point where the demand was way higher. So that was a supply-demand thing. And that's what we saw with the new cars too, because that's why people moved into the used, because they couldn't get new, because they couldn't get chips, and you couldn't do all these things. So people were obviously looking to buy whatever they could, driving prices up. But those things have come down substantially now. So auto manufacturers are now offering quite healthy rebates on new stuff too.
Did we not read something to suggest that this over addiction to debt, or people getting into debt difficulties, was a Kelowna thing more than other cities?
I have a stat here. I'll just pull it up.
Well, it's not a Kelowna thing.
We're on the top 10 list.
But I mean, we're on a top 10 list. So I wonder what it is.
Number 6 on the 2023 list of cities in Canada with the highest consumer debt per capita at a whopping $112,000.
I wonder if we can match that up with the fact that we have expensive.
When they do these surveys, they take into account mortgages.
Yeah, that includes mortgages.
So it's not just credit card debt.
So that's going to go along with having really high.
And it says on the list of cities with the largest credit card debt per capita, Kelowna holds number 9 with 5,197
So specifically on the credit card thing,
okay.
It is a bit. I mean, it's obviously a problem all across the country, but we seem to be, up there locally.
Well,
why would that be?
I would think more so Kelowna is a little more expensive to live in, 1.
Okay.
And 2, I think there's so much to do, like lifestyle stuff, that people want to be involved. They want to go out more and do different things. Like if you're in Edmonton, like maybe it feels good just to turn on the television and stay warm.
So when you look at the stats, what were the other cities? Maybe that's something to do with having a university. Because now we have students
plus more
here.
young people, yeah.
expensive city to live in.
But it is an expensive city overall. It is like our rent is, I think we're always in the top 5 in rent. Our gas prices, like if you compare us to Alberta, our gas prices are quite a bit higher than Alberta. I mean, in the summer, our food's pretty good in the summer.
So our cost of living can be up and down, winter higher than
for sure, right?
Summer maybe.
Our food costs will be higher here in the winter. Our costs to dine out compared to a city like Calgary are higher.
Might be comparable to Calgary.
I go to Calgary quite a bit, but anyway, I guess it depends on where you go, right?
It might be depending where you're going. Yeah.
I mean, I eat at the burger places.
But I heard that McDonald's doesn't charge the same price at every McDonald's.
Really?
You know,
Is that true?
I don't notice that.
They're doing price differentiation on customers based on the...
You know what they do? They have consistently bad food no matter where you go.
Okay.
No.
I didn't say that.
I hope the McDonald's lawyers don't watch this. Can we put a block on them? Because that unnecessary legal costs could contribute to your personal debt.
I do like their McChickens. How's that?
So, okay, anyone who's watched this much of this video must care about debt. What would be a good, nugget to take away? One thing somebody could do right now just to kind of maybe change their direction away from taking on too much of this kind of debt.
Well, I'm thinking that the first thing that anybody should do, if they aren't aware of how much debt they're carrying, then sit down and add it up and then look at what the minimum payments are.
Is there budget tools? Do you guys have budget tools on your website?
We do. We have some do-it-yourself tools.
I think that the first thing to do is budget, right? Like to create that budget. And if there's a free tool on mnp.ca, go there and do a budget. Just plug it in, because one of the other things that I showed a young lady that worked here, and she's like, I don't know any money. And then just I said, let me see your credit card statement. And it's like, Starbucks. You know what I mean? Like, and I said, just write down, like for the month, how much you spend at Starbucks or whatever, McDonald's or whatever it is you're spending money on. And all of a sudden that $5 is not $5, it's $500. Yeah. And you say, okay, $500, I can make my car payment. You know what I mean? Like, so I think just the knowledge, sometimes knowledge is power. I think
knowledge is power. So tracking your debt, or not your debt, tracking your expenses.
What you're spending. And then if all of a sudden you look at it and you're saying, I'm paying $700 just in interest costs.
That's part of looking at your debt.
And then so all of a sudden you see where the money's going.
And that latte is not tasting so good.
Yeah, but then you start to have control. Even in your mind, you say, oh my God, I can't do this, right? So
if you have $35,000 in credit card debt, what do you think your payment would be to get rid of it in a period of up to 5 years? Just doing it on your own.
If you get a loan?
Okay, but just do it on your. But you can't do that. You have to do it on your own.
How many years did you say?
Just how long would it take you to pay it off? What would the payment look like? Say a 5-year period.
Yeah, well, you could do $1,000 a month. You could do it in 3 years, right?
No, because you're talking about no interest.
Right, that's what I'm just saying. Yeah. So obviously that's probably going to be in 5 years about $1,000 a month.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's not $35,000 anymore. So times
it's 50, right?
So times 30, that $1,000 times 60, and that's what you paid for that debt.
Rule of thumbs.
All of that is to buy stuff you bought a long time ago.
But what
already. I always found it interesting that people find it so attractive to go into a certain furniture marketer always says, hey, and don't pay for that couch for another 3 years. Who wants to start paying for a couch that already has stains on it? If I am going to spend extra money, if a couch is worth that much to me, I should be paying for it while I'm enjoying it, not when it's almost ready to go to the dump.
Or maybe we saved for it and it feels more special because it's now ours, really ours.
Yeah,
that retailer built a mega business, furniture business out of that.
I know. Right? I do not pay till sometime in the future, but I just don't get the mindset.
What I would like to leave people with for sure too is not all debt is bad, right? Not all debt is bad. Debt to buy assets, and you can use debt to buy, you can invest, and you can write off the interest payments. Debt is a leverage tool as well. But proper use. But before you go into that, you need to educate yourself into what proper uses of debt are.
Well, I think you told me a story about borrowing money to invest.
Yeah.
And the rate you borrowed it at was less than what your return on your investment was.
Right.
And so I think that's the education part before you start the process. What are you going to get at the end of the process, or what will you have?
So one of the early learning tools for me for sure was, and I'll share that, is like, because I was living back then, you would go to the cash your check and they would give you all the cash and put it in your wallet. I ran my finances out of my back pocket. And, as you got near the end of the 2 weeks before your next check, you were eating less and doing less things. So I took it upon myself to borrow money to buy a GIC. And then I made payments on a GIC, which at the end, I ended up with a $15,000 GIC at the end of my payments.
With some interest.
With some interest. But it also taught me that I could pay myself first. And that's the big thing that people need to learn in life. Pay yourself first. And that's like whatever money you're making, 10%, 15%, whatever you can kind of afford, pay yourself first. And then when I met Nikki, she was again doing the same thing because she was working in the bar at the time, like that, serving drinks and that. And, she got tips and, and she was, again, like most young people, we were living off of our check. And I said, tell you what, I'll cover because we started moving in together. I said, I'll cover all the expenses. I'll pay the rent and everything. You put your money in the bank. Spend it however you want, but you can put all your money in the bank and you can save it. And that, she had never saved a dime before that in her life. And all of a sudden she had like $15,000 in a few months. And she's like, holy cow, that works, right? So that lit a fire in her too, right? So, and I think if people believe they can do it, I've helped a few young people out too doing that. Mm-hmm. And I said, if you get a raise and you're kind of surviving right now without the raise, put all of it into a TFSA, put all of it into an RSP and all that kind of stuff. And, instead of getting more Starbucks and more this and more that, I think that financial literacy needs to be shared with people more, so that education.
When you talk about somebody using their credit card or just a debit card for Starbucks, I want to bring out my calculator and Adam, how much do you spend in a year? I'm thinking, though, we're looking at a takeaway. One of my takeaways would be is if you have debt that you can't handle, don't be afraid to reach out for help. A licensed insolvency trustee would offer a free consultation, go over your options, and you may not have to do a bankruptcy or proposal. You might have another option.
I think that's great advice. I think knowledge is power for sure, and educating yourself, whether that's through MNP, watching some YouTube videos as a starter. You know what I mean? Talking to people, talking to people that you find that you think is successful, asking them what they do, right? And then trying to emulate some of that stuff, right? If you want to climb a mountain, talk to somebody that's been to the top.
Get a Sherpa.
Whatever that meant, I don't know.
He's been to the top.
That's what they call it when you go to Everest. There's a local guide that takes you up there. It's an obscure reference. But, this has been an education for me too. I want to thank you for coming in and sharing your knowledge with us.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It was great.
And thank you for watching Kelowna Now.